Welcome to the Family Oyibo podcast, where we talk about life, faith, family, and other random topics. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoy the show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the podcast. My name is Sarah, and for today's episode, it's just going to be me. I won't be able to have my family members on for every single episode. So for some of these filler episodes, I'll be sharing some parenting stories and discussing why kids do the things that they do. So let's get into it. For today's episode, I'm going to be talking about separation anxiety, how babies don't really see themselves as humans, and I'll share a story about my son that relates to the topic. So my son is a pretty outgoing kid. He's really lively and happy and cheerful, and he loves people. He loves making new friends. Anytime I take him to the park, he just takes off and makes a new friend within like a minute or two. Like, he is so social, but he wasn't always that way. As a very little baby, he was very attached to me, like attached at the hip. He just wanted to be sitting on my hip with a hand on my arm and another hand down my shirt. And that was where he was happy and comfortable and didn't want to move. So as a baby, he was so attached. If he didn't see me in the room or hear me or feel me, he would just get in a lot of distress and he would cry and cry and cry until somebody gave him back to me and he'd be fine. A story that really illustrates that is when the first time I got my hair done after he was born, I went to a salon just to get it washed and twisted. That was it. So I had my sister Hannah come over and I fed him right before I left. So he had a full tummy. He was happy, sleeping in his little rocker. He was fine. I let her know where the bottle was, his pacifier, and I left. And at the salon, I had my hair washed. I'd just gotten done washing it, and Hannah started calling me and texting me. She was saying, oh my God, he's freaking out and nothing I do is working. He's just screaming and crying and I don't know what to do. So I had to pack up and come back home. And as soon as I picked him up, he was fine. He just wanted me. That was it. Didn't want anything else. And at the time, it was a little bit frustrating just because you can't get any alone time. You know, if I showered, he had to be in his bouncer so he could see me or hear me, or I would have to shower when he was sleeping. If I was cooking, he had to see me in the kitchen. He couldn't just be in the next room. Or at nighttime, if he woke up and didn't see me or hear me, then he would just cry and cry and cry until I picked him up and fed him. It was a lot. It was a lot. And I kind of knew that babies were attached. I don't think I was prepared for that much. The first almost year of his life, he was just so attached to me and only me and nobody else, even though he still, wanted to go to other people in our family. For the most part, he just wanted me, which I guess isn't unusual for babies. I have a study that I referenced, and I'll put it in the podcast description for people who want to check it out. But babies don't really see themselves as individual humans at first. They see themselves as part of their mother, which makes sense because a baby's in your belly, for 9-10 months. And then when they come out, it's this big, scary world. And that's why they like to be swaddled, because it makes them feel nice and tight like they were in the uterus. And they like to be warm because it was warm inside their mom's body. And they like to be on their mom's chest because they can hear their mom's voice and the sounds that they heard inside the womb. So it makes sense why newborns are just so attached to their mothers. And the article that I referenced, they talk about a study that was done with little babies where they put them in front of a mirror to see if they recognize the reflection as theirs. And the babies would pat the mirror, but wouldn't really recognize it was them. So they put a little red dot on the baby's nose with paint or something and then put the baby back in front of the mirror. and the baby was reaching for the other baby's nose, other baby, their reflection, but the baby wouldn't touch their own nose. Like they didn't realize that the dot was on them. It's interesting how babies just see moms as an extension of themselves, really. And you can tell, like, when they wave their arms and their legs around and it freaks them out, and they start crying because they don't know what's happening, even though they're the ones doing it. It's just, it's funny and it's cute, but then it's also extremely draining because of how much work you have to put in. But the good thing is that if you respond very quickly to babies when they're crying or when they're in distress, whether they need food or if they need help going to sleep or if they need comfort, the more you respond, and if you respond quickly, right when they need something, it actually helps with their attachment issues. Um, so babies get separation anxiety around 6 to 7 months because that's when they realize they're a separate person. And that also freaks them out because then they're like, whoa, you know, like, my mom isn't just part of me, she can leave. And I noticed that with my son too. If I left a room, he would just lose it, which is why doctors encourage you to play peekaboo with your kids because, where you do, where's mommy? And you cover your face, they'll see that you're, kind of gone. And then you open your hands and you say, there she is. And they're like, oh, wait a minute. Like, if I can't see her, she's still there. I think that's called object permanence. That's a whole other thing. But with the separation anxiety issue, it gets worse before it gets better. So the best thing that you can do is to be there for your kids, to give them that love and care that they need, and respond to every single need they have as quickly as possible. Because then when they get older, they get more independent, and they have kind of the courage and security to explore the world on their own, because they know, no matter what they do, they're going to have that caregiver there to take care of them if anything happens. And I noticed that with my son when he got a little bit older, around the age of 1 or 1.5. We would go to a mall and I would work in my friend's shop every once in a while. And my son would kind of just, waddle around the shop and touch things and look at different things. But if he went too far, he would go out, then turn around and see if I was still watching. And then he would go out a little bit further and turn around and see if I was still watching. And he never really went too far because I was always right there. But I noticed when he started to get super independent, he would just take off and wouldn't even look back because he just knew that I was going to go after him and that I would come and save him from whatever he was getting himself into. But it's interesting. It's interesting why babies do the things that they do. It's also exhausting, but that's part of being a parent, I suppose. With separation anxiety and with babies and meeting their every need as soon as they have a need, it's very draining. And it's just something that I think parents just kind of accept happens. You see a lot of moms in some of these mom groups, um, online, like in Facebook groups or on Reddit pages, and they're like, "Why didn't anybody warn me? Why didn't anyone tell me?" And it's just like how it's very hard to explain to people the level of exhaustion that you feel, or the amount of work it takes to keep a tiny human alive. It's, unless you've experienced it, it's very hard to describe, because then it just sounds like you're complaining. But it's something that I obviously wouldn't change, just because now that my son is here and I just see like this tiny little part of me running around and having his own thoughts and opinions. It's so strange because, you hear from other parents that you'll never experience a love like this. And it's true, because if anybody else, literally anybody else in my life, was that demanding and wanted all of my time and attention and just, constantly cried and cried and cried, I would be so annoyed. because I'm a very independent person. I like to be on my own. I'm not like overly touchy feely. And, I don't like to be screamed or yelled at. I like my space and I just don't like to be on other people's schedules. I have my own habits and routines and schedules that I set for myself. And with a baby, that just all goes out the window because you have to meet their needs. And it's not just, you know, on a certain schedule, because with newborns, it's around the clock. It's constant. Because I remember that the first night in the hospital, I was like, oh, thank God, like I can finally sleep, because I was in labor for like 23 hours. And I remember I just got to sleep, and a nurse came in and said, okay, the baby is hungry. He needs to eat. And I was like, oh my goodness. So, I got up, fed him. They took him back to the nursery, and I'm a light sleeper, so it took me a while to get back to sleep. And once I got back to sleep, they came in with him again, and they were like, he needs to eat again. And oh my goodness, it was so draining. And it feels like you're being tortured because after you give birth, it's like you get hit by a truck. And you can't, especially if you have a hard labor. For me, I was up for 2 days and hadn't eaten or slept really well in 24 hours. And I was just like beyond exhausted. But, but now I had to take care of myself and take care of this human. But this little human was first priority because he literally couldn't do anything by himself. And he wouldn't take bottles either. So he was completely dependent on me for absolutely everything. And that's just something I was completely unprepared for. That and him being attached just 24/7. But thankfully, that's better. Now that he's in kindergarten, he's become very independent, which is a good thing and kind of an annoying thing too, because he'll just go for things and be like, I can do this, I can help, I'm going to help. Like I was trying to hang some blinds and curtains, and I had to get a new drill bit for my drill. And I put it down for a second, and I turned around, and he had the drill in his hand and was just like pushing different buttons to figure out how to turn it on. And he figured out how to turn it on and said, I'm ready, mommy. I'll come help you. I help. And I was like, oh, no. Had to take the drill away, explain to him that that's not a toy, it's a tool that only parents can use, not you. He just wanted to help, and he just wants to do things by himself now. But he still has those little moments where he still needs me, which is cute, but again, also exhausting, because I'm like, you should be able to do certain things by yourself. Like going to bed at night is still a problem because he just wants to talk and hold my hand and have me scratch his back and rub his back and sing to him and read him stories. And it's just this whole production, which actually reminds me a lot of Hannah, my sister, who watched him when he was really little, because Hannah was the exact same way as a baby. We had to put on like a whole puppet show, sing her songs, rub her back, a whole thing to get her to sleep, just for her to wake up like at the crack of dawn. So yeah, kids are exhausting. Have one. They're really fun. That's about it for today's episode. Thank you so much for listening. Next week, I'll be back with my dad, and we're going to be discussing childhood and the differences between his childhood growing up in Nigeria in the 1950s and my childhood being a 90s baby here in good old Iowa. So take care, and I'll talk to you next week. Bye.